Welcome back to My Trauma's Clinic, but I'm iconic. This is the second part of Jason's episode. So if you want to see part one, it's linked down below. And I recommend you watch it so you can have a better understanding of this part of Jason's story. What are some specific challenges that individuals with adult ADHD may face when it comes to staying organized in their academic or professional life?
So it can be really, really difficult with adults with adult ADHD because usually for the most part they're just being diagnosed, so they've only just figured out they actually have ADHD. So some of the specific challenges include things like organizing your day at work. This is something I myself, with someone with adult ADHD, has to really focus on because you can lose track of things. It can be also to do things like responsibilities at work, in how instructions are relayed to you. Missing small details, for example, can be quite difficult with adult ADHD. And then, at the same time as at work, it's sort of interpersonal relationships, friendships, and how you manage teams and all those sort of things can be can be affected by the ADHD brain. Prioritizing different tasks can be affected by the ADHD brain. And then things like emotional volatility, how you deal with things like rejection, dysphoria, and criticism can be very, very difficult. So these are things that you have to kind of take into account if you're an employer that have people in your organization that have ADHD.
Can you discuss the potential impact of adult ADHD on an individual's ability to maintain focus and concentration during lectures or work tasks?
Mhm. One of the things with ADHD that makes it very difficult, especially with inattentive ADHD, which we used to be called ADD back in the day, is if you're not very, very interested in something, it can be incredibly difficult to maintain focus. And as a result, you may miss out on key details, you may miss out on key sort of nuggets of knowledge, especially from lectures, that can be really, really vital for your final grade, for example. I remember myself at university sitting through a research and criminology lecture and not remembering any of it, and even going back over sort of lecture notes and just not being able to take things in because I just wasn't interested. So it's finding ways to stimulate the ADHD brain and making it sort of palatable that can help you. And also, if you're a lecturer or someone who's delivering training, it may go without saying, but try and make it as interesting as possible, essentially. The more interesting it is, the more people will be able to engage in it, and the more you'll be able to access the ADHD brain. But yeah, it can be very, very difficult maintaining focus at work. And some of the things you can do can include things like making sure your sleep schedule is consistent. So trying your best to sleep at the same time every single day could be really good. One thing I do is I don't set an alarm, and the reason I don't do that is because I believe in my body getting a full day's rest. But I do that because I go to bed very early. I go to bed about 9:30, 9 o'clock at night. So I try to get as much sleep as I can. Your diet as well, so get lots of fruits and veg, lots of decent proteins as well can help sort of maintain focus. And obviously exercise as well, and making sure you're stimulated outside of work, so that can help too. But yeah, something to always keep in mind if you're hiring someone or you're lecturing or training people that may have ADHD.
How do you, how, how do executive function deficits associated with adult ADHD affect an individual's ability to prioritize tasks and meet deadlines?
hmm So with executive functioning, things like organization and the memory and things of that nature, setting deadlines can be incredibly difficult just because of the fact that you may not realize with ADHD, the perception of time is slightly different. So, one thing I get some of my learners to do now is I get them to what I call time budget. So, essentially, I get them to write down a specific amount of things they have to do, their responsibilities, and I get them to write down what they think or how long they think it's going to take. So, I don't know, for example, a research project, they might write down 2 hours, and I say, okay, when you do that, I want you to time how long it actually takes, and essentially because the ADHD lacks executive functioning and really struggles to break down things like deadlines and time budgeting or allowing time for things, they usually overestimate or underestimate how long things are going to take. When you learn to time budget, you go, actually, you know what? I have more of an understanding of how this task works and how long it's going to take and how long I have to give myself to actually get this task going. But things like deadlines can be very difficult. So I'd advise employers, staff members at school, if you have learners that have ADHD, maybe be a bit more lenient with sort of deadlines and timing. If you can allow for extra time, that could be beneficial. Same for employers. If there's projects you have to do, even things like just like 10% more time would be really beneficial just for people with ADHD to sort of catch up and actually produce their best amount of work.
Can you explore, can you explore the potential impact of adult ADHD on an individual's ability to handle multiple responsibilities or projects simultaneously?
hmm It can be very difficult, you know. So what essentially happens with the ADHD brain is because of the difficulty of dopamine regulation is that you're constantly doing things, and you know this famous saying goes, "Jack of all trades, master of none," and essentially that's what the ADHD brain is like. You're constantly trying to do things and trying to prioritize things and trying to balance so many different things that when you're given multiple tasks, is that essentially what can happen is that it can be very difficult to actually sit down and do one task, and as a result, you may feel completely overwhelmed sometimes, and it may feel like you're just not going to get anything done. And that is very difficult. That does apply to people that aren't diagnosed with ADHD as well, for sure. But with the ADHD brain, it makes it even more difficult, insofar that you're constantly essentially feeling that sense of restlessness and lack of inner peace. So for some people, medication may help with that. It may help to actually sit down and focus for a certain period of time. There are techniques that you can use. For example, one I like to use is sitting down for maybe 30 minutes, setting a timer, working 30 minutes, and then going for like a 5 or 10 minute break. That's called the Pomodoro technique. It works depending on your tolerance. So I start off with 5 minutes and 10 minutes and 15 minutes. But that can help you focus as well. And for me as well with ADHD, my ADHD, I turn my phone off at work now. It used to be on D&D, but I was too tempted to check my notifications, and then you go down the rabbit hole of going on social media or what have you. So my phone is off, and when my phone is off for that 30 minutes, I'm trying to stay as focused as I can. But it is very incredibly difficult, yeah, for sure.
How does technology play a role in assisting individuals with adult ADHD in overcoming time management and organizational challenges?
Oh, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. We look at our phones nowadays and they're essentially supercomputers, you know. For me personally, and for other adults that I spoke to with ADHD and give advice to, I would always advise using, if you have Siri or whatever the Android version is, I would always advise using those sort of things, those sort of tools, only because they are incredible for helping you get organized. Even things like such as going shopping, you know, just saying to your phone, "Oh, remind me to go shopping at 2 o'clock in the afternoon," or whatever it is so beneficial. Things like using your calendar, your Outlook calendar, for example, or we use Outlook at Weston College, is incredible. The to-do list function on Outlook is incredible as well. Without these sort of things, these bits of technology, I would genuinely struggle to work. And it wasn't until actually accessing these things, I realized a increase in my production so that I can take some of the burden I had of remembering things and putting it on technology to the point that it can actually remind me at these specific times, points in time when I need to do certain things. So yeah, technology is absolutely brilliant. It takes the burden off the ADHD brain and allows you to focus on your work and allows you to sort of meet those deadlines and tasks.
How does the stigma surrounding adult ADHD contribute to the challenges faced by individuals in higher education or the workplace?
It's really difficult. There's lots of stigmas about ADHD, about, you know, it makes you immature or unhireable, for example, or it only manifests in children, or it's made up. I've heard that being used in some workplaces or in some experiences. It could be very difficult, and as a result, it may be difficult coming forward about your ADHD when it comes to your workplace. You know, the word inclusivity gets thrown around a lot, but I think there needs to be more of a deep sort of understanding of what that actually means, and looking into these sort of stigmas and making sure that employees don't feel like they can become succumb to these stigmas in your workplace. And what that looks like essentially is having representation, for example, having clear policies that are rooted in sort of anti-stigmatization, so especially things like ADHD, for example, or neurodiversity as a whole. It can be very difficult in the workplace, you know. And with ADHD as well, it's already difficult because people that have it know that you've gone your entire life essentially being stigmatized or essentially struggling with certain things. So you think, for example, if you go to university, you think if you play the game, go to university, get a good job, you'll be all right. But that stigmatization is still there. And it's something that employees and staff and students and education systems as a whole need to take into account, is how we discuss ADHD affects how people view themselves as well, and how they sort of manifest in different systems.
Absolutely. And that's very true. I feel like the stigma surrounding ADHD is so humongous, especially when people think that it
Hmm.
doesn't exist.
Mm.
And I'm like, it's just, I don't know, but I find it very like shocking when people say that. And I'm like,
Hmm.
is the and what I got to say, I admire the confidence of being able to say a statement like that without any sorts of, repercussions or how it impacts other people or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's quite brave. But like it's just I can't
It comes
fathom.
from it's ignorant, essentially. That's all it is. It's
Mm,
just ignorant. People, I think a lot of the time with like the human brain, like when we can't understand like a concept, we just like sort of like make things up, essentially. So if we don't understand how someone can really struggle with things like inattention or hyperactivity or impulsivity or even a combined version of it, if we don't get how that works because we've never seen it before, we go, well, it must be made up because in my experience that doesn't work. So yeah, that I think that's usually where it comes from.
and like they say, ignorance is bliss. They're happy in their
Absolutely.
little bubble.
Hmm.
And
Definitely.
I'm like, but when it starts affecting them,
Hmm.
is they're unhappy. And I'm like, well, I did tell you. Like, can you explore the potential impact of stress and anxiety on the ability of individuals with adult ADHD to effectively, no, sorry, ignore that. How does the
Cool.
lack of structure, routine in higher education or certain work environments affect individuals with adult ADHD?
How does the what structure, sorry?
The lack of a structure.
The lack of structure, right? Yeah, of course, So, with ADHD in general, it's very, very difficult to stay organized. And, you need sort of a structure in place to allow organization. And to have a structure, you have to essentially build a structure. And to build a structure, you have to fail at certain things. So with ADHD in general, we struggle with rejection dysphoria, or essentially when we feel like things aren't going our way, it can be very debilitating. And that is how structure is made, unfortunately. So it can be very, very difficult breaking structure and then figuring out a new one, and that can completely mess up your day. I'll give you a real life example. I remember it's about a month ago. I was going to the gym and I needed to go for a run afterwards. So I needed to change my bag because my regular bag couldn't carry all my stuff in it. So I changed my bag, but because I changed my routine, I changed my structure, leading up to going to the workplace, I ended up leaving my keys at home. So I went back home to get my keys because luckily I only live 5 minute walk from my workplace. And I went back home and got something else and left my keys again. I ended up leaving my keys at home 3 times. And the reason was because I genuinely, my brain couldn't deal with the fact that I'd changed my bag, for example, and it was a very, very difficult moment. And it was, for me, it got to a point where it was very frustrating and also a little bit embarrassing. I was coming home to my partner's, but it's like, oh, you left something, you've left something, you left something. And that sort of lack of organization of the ADHD brain is sort of linked to the more inattentive sides of things, and it can manifest in the workplace as well. So it's all about maybe having that bit of empathy, that bit of understanding employers as well, and in the workplace, staff members as well, with who learns that have ADHD. You can remind them too. I always advocate for reminders on your phone and calendars, but if you know that you have a learner of ADHD who's likely to forget, it could be just dropping a post-it note on their computer screen, or just reminding them before and say, actually, you know what, you usually forget X, Y, and Z, make sure you bring it in tomorrow. But yeah, lack of structure can be incredibly difficult for people with ADHD in the workplace.
I feel like a lack of structure also makes like your ADHD, like I have ADHD and autism, but it makes it much more disabling.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know, like when there's changes that happen, gotten better, but like
Mm.
I'm just like, okay, this is not like I don't know what to do.
Hmm.
I don't know
Hmm.
what I need to do. Like, let's just say I'm like, okay, this podcast is you're like, okay, can we move it back an hour?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, sure, we can do it. That's what I say to your face.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, it's moving back an hour. So my whole routine and structure has changed.
Yeah.
What do I do now? Because this has been planned 2 weeks in advance. I don't
Hmm.
know what to do with my time. I don't know what to do if I have a spare time. How do I prepare for this? Even though I do podcasts several times a month, but I'm like, it's like, okay, how do I organize everything? So
Hmm.
what to the point where my oh to the to the point where my brain can process it and adapt
Mm,
to it.
hmm.
Because that's, I feel like one thing that people don't talk about. I don't know if this is autism or my ADHD, or it could be both. But the way that my brain works is so rigid that
Mm.
even the smallest change could just throw me off.
Yeah, I mean it's a transition,
Mm.
and people with ADHD and autism as well really struggle with transitions, and that's any transition. That's like a break in something or any sort of slight minor change, can be really. It's like you say, essentially really debilitating. That's why I always when I do a staff training for ADHD, I always say even if it's a change of room or a change of time or you're running 5 minutes late, just let your learners know, because that whole change in routine, change in structure ruins their entire day and can have a bit of a domino effect. And the least you can do if you're gonna change someone's day, let them know so they have time to prepare themselves for the transition rather than just like letting it happen because that can be very debilitating.
Mm. And with that comes like, anxiety
Oh
and
yeah, big time.
depression.
Hmm.
So can you explore the potential impacts of co-occurring conditions, such as those, on the educational and occupational challenges faced by individuals with adult ADHD?
So the thing is with me is that I know that I'm a big fan of synchronicity. So it's a concept that essentially everything is related to everything. So with ADHD, for example, no one has just ADHD. It's impossible. Like there's a decent chance, or at least in my opinion, 100% chance that there's something else going on in your life that you're struggling with, either mental or physical or emotional. Um, and so the term co-occurring, I think in the future, for example, won't even be a term because it's just a fact. Like, everyone has multiple things going on, especially with things like neurodiversity. And what that looks like in the workplace can be so debilitating, like you say. So, you can have ADHD, you can struggle with organization, but then you can become depressed about the fact that you can't stay organized, and then that can lead to sort of poor work performance, and that can lead to poor confidence at work, and that can even lead to you losing your job, and then losing your job leads to financial stress, which leads to more depression, and you can see how it can just spiral and spiral and spiral, and then you have the anxiety about those things I just mentioned as well, the likelihood of those sort of things happening, and then that's also to say things like struggling with. Most people have like a difficult relationship with their food, for example, or exercise, or interpersonal relationships, romantic relationships, friendships. All of these things can be co-occurring, and can happen at the same time. So you have the co-occurring medical side of things like ADHD with OCD or depression, or things like dyslexia, which is known to link with, or dyspraxia, loads of different things. But then you also have sort of the interpersonal things that happen as well, and of course workplace dynamics as well. You notice who's rewarded in the workplace. You notice who's in the leadership teams, and if they're not people that have things that you go through or aren't representative of you, that sends you a message of actually, you know what, I can't necessarily achieve this unless I do X, Y, and Z. Or if I do X, Y, and Z, I won't get there anyway. And then, of course, on a wider scale, you also have things like systemic issues. Your race, your sex, your gender, your marital status, all these sort of things, your ability level, all these protected characteristics that affect it. So, even co-occurring ADHD is like you can't really just stop it at that. You have to look at the whole picture, and that's kind of how I look at things, especially when I'm working with learners.
How does the variability of symptoms and challenges associated with adult ADHD impact the education and occupational experiences of individuals?
It can be very, very difficult. Some of the most rare symptoms of ADHD. I mean, the thing about ADHD and pretty much all neurodiversity, all mental health issues is a spectrum. So for some people, I mean, I've seen some learners, for example, who for the life of them, even if they use technology and they use organizational tools and strategies, they sometimes can't even get out of bed, for example, for whatever reason. Sometimes you have learners of ADHD, they struggle with things like chronic fatigue syndrome. I've seen that before quite a few times. Things like SPD, I've seen that a few times. Co-occurring things like autism. The conventional ADHD, which is I'd say what I have essentially, which is inattentive ADHD or sometimes even hyperactive or impulsive, is only really one side of the spectrum and it's quite common. And those more rare types of ADHD or rare types of neurodiversity, should we say, can make it even more difficult to treat, not only just in the workplace, but at home and clinically as well, because there's so many different things going on. What we know for sure is that there is some sort of link with things like your diet and nutrition and exercise level and sleep, that can alleviate some of these things, but not cure them, you know. And
Mm.
we're getting towards this point, I think, in the research where we're looking at a chicken and egg kind of thing. Is it the environment that causes these things, or is it things that happen before the environment? You know, is it nature versus nurture thing? Do we learn these things? You know, me personally, I'm linking towards more of a nurture thing,
Mm.
but you know, it could be very, very difficult going forward. Absolutely.
So, uh, so this is your area of speciality, coaching and mentoring.
Yeah.
How do what are the potential benefits of coaching or mentoring programs in helping individuals with adult ADHD overcome educational and occupational challenges?
They're exponential, to be honest with you. The first thing is that I literally just I'm doing a review of my provision right now. Funnily enough, and one of the first things I do, I ask my learners for feedback. You know, and one of the first things that I saw that was quite common actually amongst the feedback was this idea that someone finally understands you. You know, and you know when someone finally understands you, it is powerful because all of your life you've not been able to make sense of certain things. And right now, somebody's going, "This is why this is happening. Don't worry, you're not weird." So there's that sense of self that comes with having a coach or mentor with ADHD. Second thing is obviously learning new skills. You know, learning skills that will allow you to access things that you want to do. You know, so if you want to achieve whatever you want, be that be an actor or I don't even know, you know, whatever it is in education or in the workplace, you have somebody that is invested in your ability to do that sort of thing and will help you be able to get there. You know, and help you to be able to devise a plan to get there as well. So I probably say those few things as well, but also the way I work as well, as I said before, is a more synchronistic point of view. I want to know, you know, how you identify where you know what's your life been like up to now, what kind of challenges do you go through, you know, what was your upbringing like, what your parents like, what your family like, you know, how your relationships and all of these sort of things intersect and give that sort of holistic, whole person point of view to help you be able to devise a strategy to help you to, navigate your systems and even sometimes alleviate them, you know. So yeah, having a coach or mentor is something that if you have ADHD in the workplace or education, I definitely look into having it if you can afford it. If not, then there are plenty of articles and free resources out there that you can use.
What are the potential long-term effects of unaddressed or unsupported adult ADHD on an individual's educational and career trajectory?
It can be very, very debilitating if I'm being honest with you. You know, so for the most part, if you look on senior leadership teams, you know, in education, in all sort of fields, aspects of life, really, they don't really have ADHD, at least not diagnosed. And most of the time, you know, they're the same people that come from the same background that that are usually neurotypical, if we're being honest with you. And as a result, the thing that you learn is that people get filtered out as they get higher, especially when it comes to people that are neurodiverse. So long term, I mean, if it's unaddressed, struggling with things like organization, struggling with things like communication, rejection dysphoria, struggling with things like criticism, struggling with sort of workplace dynamics, it can be very, very difficult to progress because you need all of these things to do well in most careers, if not all careers, to be honest with you, and all walks of life. So if those things are unaddressed and those things aren't spoken about and those things are things that you struggle with, it can be very, very difficult to achieve sort of progression in career. And as a result, you may struggle economically as well.
How can building a strong support network positively impact the transition to adult ADHD?
Art is vital. You know, you need people around you that understand you, or not just understand you, want to understand you. So that could be family, that could be friends, that could be children, that could be whoever. With any walk of life, realistically, not just ADHD, but with any walk of life, you need people around you that are a bit like your village. You know, the constant phrases. You know, it takes a village. That's like an old school phrase, and you need people around you that you can bounce ideas off, that think differently to you, but also care about you and allow you to really be vulnerable and allow that sort of psychological safety in order for you to thrive and achieve. And sometimes that happens organically with your family. Sometimes it isn't your family. Sometimes it's friends. Sometimes it's colleagues. Sometimes it's people you meet later on in life. But whoever it is, everyone needs someone, at least a group of people that they can definitely grow with.
Amazing. What are some effective ways to educate family members and friends about adult ADHD to foster understanding and support?
Sometimes it's just having an honest conversation with your friends and family about what your ADHD means to you and how it's affected you. I mean, and of course, it depends about communities and stigmatization within communities. For example, I'm of West African origin, so my family are from Ghana. And ADHD isn't really something that's spoken about too much within my community. But obviously, being an expert in it and educating my brother and my sisters and speaking to them about how my ADHD works and how it may look, for example, is something that allows them to maybe not maybe sometimes even see it themselves, but see it in people around them, and hopefully become more understanding. So it is important to help your family and friends understand your ADHD, because it can foster that sort of psychological safety again, and as a result, even improve and boost relationships going forward.
I feel like relationships are so important.
They're vital. They're everything for us.
And I feel like one, if you don't have a strong network around you, it's everything could fall apart so quickly.
Oh yeah.
You need somebody to pull you up when you're at the lowest point.
hmm hmm
Can you
Or
just, sorry.
or no, I was gonna say, or look, sometimes you just need someone to get down there with you and help you get
Mm,
up at the same time, and that can be just as powerful.
yeah, that's extremely true.
Mm.
Yeah, I forgot about that. You do make a very good point. Can you discuss the potential challenges and benefits of involving family members in treatment plans for adult ADHD?
Oh well, the thing is, if you're, especially with treatment plan, it's usually a younger person. You need people to understand where you want to get to, and having that whole life approach of like the people that you love involved in your recovery is just absolutely vital. It needs to happen, realistically, because they become invested in your life and you become invested in them, seeing them proud. Obviously, you want to be sort of, you want them in your treatment plan for sort of legal reasons, all that sort of stuff, but what you really want is you want them to see you as someone that can get better, someone that can get help, someone that can function and become a member of society, or become something that is seen as a full functioning member of society. And that involves things like treatment plans. That involves things like liaising with your ADHD mentor or coach, or employer or counselor or therapist or whoever. The moment you see that someone you love is invested in you getting better and you getting help is a very, very powerful moment. So yeah, it's very, very important.
Absolutely. I
Mm,
agree. I
mm,
feel like, when you feel loved and cared about, you're willing to do anything and everything
mhm,
to make things work.
mm.
Um, how can support groups specifically tailored for adults with ADHD provide a sense of belonging and understanding during this transition?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, to be honest, with you, I wish I was part of one. I don't really know if there are any around me, to be honest with you. But having a community of people who think the way you think and understand where you come from your entire life, it's about that representation. It's about that sense of, like you say, that sense of belonging, that I'm actually not alone and people understand me and there are people who think like me and I'm not strange, or I do fit into this certain group. Ultimately, with human beings in general, we all want to fit into groups. That's how we survive. That's what the reason why me and you are here is because we have common ancestors that fit into groups and we're able to stay together and survive and hunt and kill and do all these sort of things, and be able to sort of evolve and become me and you today. That sense of belonging, that sense of community is something that all humans need. Without it, I mean, I remember watching a YouTube video about what would happen if you're the only person alive on the planet, and they theorized that within a year you would completely lose your mind, because humans are natural social creatures anyway. So we are always looking for things that connect us, either that's neurodiversity or football teams or clothes we wear or music we listen to, whatever it is. We're constantly looking for connections. So having that with ADHD is absolutely vital.
I feel like, you know, it all go if you look at, Maslow's theory of a
Yeah.
hierarchy, that's like the third level of needs. And it's
Hmm.
like that's as humans, we cannot thrive without, feeling like we're part of something. Even, you know what, even if I'm saying this, I'm like, I think I can thrive by myself,
Hmm.
but like the logical part of me knows that I can't.
Yeah.
But the stubborn part of me is like, yeah, you can. And I feel like that's a lot of people have gone through so much adversity. Also feel like they can, like, go through things by themselves, but they cannot.
No.
And I feel like at a certain point of healing and recovering from their trauma and adversity, they will be able to realize that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, can you explore the role of peer support in navigating the challenges and successes of living with adult ADHD?
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar sort of thing with peer support. It's your friends, it's your colleagues, it's people that are around you, and again, it's that sense of community, and that can really be fostered by, a really inclusive manager. I mean, I'm quite fortunate to have that myself, to be honest with you. I have two managers that are incredibly inclusive that look to foster that sort of community of you can come to me with anything you want, because that helps me navigate my adult ADHD. Again, things like anxiety, for example, that can be prevalent with adult ADHD, can be navigated a bit more if you have someone that you know that you can talk to within your team or within your group or within your friendship group, when it comes to ADHD. Like I said, we're constantly looking for connections, we're constantly looking to connect with people and to do the right thing and to be with people, and there's nothing wrong with that, there's nothing wrong with looking for connection. It's the best thing about being human beings is the fact that, you know, me and you could be best friends and we don't even know it just yet. It's one of those things, and we're always looking at that connection, and it definitely helps us sort of foster and grow and figure out, the best versions of ourselves.
How can individuals with adult ADHD effectively communicate their needs and expectations to their support network?
So yeah, I mean, it's about psychological safety and having that with your friends and family, but it's also about, having a bit more self-confidence and building up that self-esteem, because I think one thing I've realized with ADHD is that a lot of people with ADHD struggle with low self-esteem, and there's a variety of different reasons why. It's societal stigmatization, it's their own stigmatization about how they feel about themselves based on what they've experienced. Pardon me. And for whatever reason, that may even manifest in your own personal relationships and your own support network. So it's all about maybe realizing that, you are allowed to have needs and wants, and you are allowed to ask for what you need and want, and everyone should do it because it will help you grow. A good quote of mine that I got from a woman named Tracy Jolliffe on a leadership course that I was on, and she said, "Comfort is a choice." And when you understand comfort as a choice, that means that you're able to put yourself first in certain situations. So, for example, if like for me, like one of the things that you do really well is you always say like, do you need anything? Do you need to go to the toilet or anything like that? Or like, do you need before you start, are you ready? And that's like giving me the choice to choose my comfort, And as a result, you feel a bit more at ease. So, with that sort of thing, just maybe having a bit more assertiveness and a bit more self confidence, saying this is what I need, and it would be beneficial for me and beneficial for us in long term if it's beneficial for me if I get these sort of things.
What are some resources or organizations that provide assistance and guidance for building a support network for adults with ADHD?
Oh my goodness. So I think the best one that I know of is probably Attitude. So it's a magazine website, but just the amount of resources on there it's outstanding, to be honest with you. And there are comment sections on there, there are boards on there. They have a YouTube channel which is really good and supportive. Obviously, I mean, I don't know too many others if I'm being completely honest with you, but I'd say that one is the main one. But I see on LinkedIn is quite good as well within the neurodiverse community. There are lots of different posts and hashtags going along. Instagram, obviously, Twitter, social media. Obviously, social media can be a minefield, but there are communities and pockets within these sort of social media platforms that can help. But I'd say Attitude, you'll find professionals on there, people with ADHD in the comments, just talking about it, and if you're an online person, that can really beneficial. Then of course there's like sort of wider sort of mental health sort of charities as well. Like there's things like Mind, and like there's I know for men there's like Talk Club, which is really good for mental health as well, which may intersect with ADHD too. So So yeah, lots of different communities popping up and definitely accessible for most people.
Amazing. Can you discuss the potential benefits of seeking professional therapy or counseling as part of a comprehensive support network for adult ADHD?
Yeah, I mean I get counseling, I get it, I get supervision as part of my job. And I'll be honest with you, it's essentially the same as going to the gym, but for your mind. It helps you work things out. It helps you figure out patterns in the past and work towards more sustainable and healthy patterns in the future. It's an investment in yourself. The same way you go to the gym, the same way you eat pretty well, sleep pretty well. I think therapy is one of the last things. And in my world, in my ideal Jason world, everyone would have a therapist or a counselor, someone they could talk to. It doesn't have to be every day. I only go once a month. But some people may need more, some people may need less. But ultimately, it's a third party that isn't related to you that can build that support network because they are someone that's completely objective towards you and trying their best to help you as a person, as a whole. So yeah, it's vital, especially as part of a network.
How can individuals with adult ADHD foster supportive relationships with friends and loved ones who may not fully understand ADHD?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things is having a bit of patience, again, going back a little bit, speaking about the wider stigmatization, most people have an idea of ADHD and what that kind of looks like as a whole, and as a result, may have preconceived ideas of what ADHD is. But if you are being a bit more patient, explaining maybe some of the research or some of what you go through, maybe, or maybe some of what you've been through in the past, or what it means and how you struggle and all that sort of thing. If somebody cares about you, they will naturally sort of gravitate and be like, "Oh, actually, you know what? That sounds pretty difficult to do." And as a result, you may build even deeper and foster even closer relationships. So, but ultimately, it's having a bit of patience and a bit of empathy on our part as well with ADHD, which is something that we can struggle with at times, and understand that not everyone has it and not everyone may understand what it is. So yeah, a bit of patience, a bit of empathy, definitely,
I feel like patience goes a long way.
definitely.
Like when I have close relationships with one of when I was living in this supported accommodation,
Mm,
this care home, a residential care home for children.
mm,
I got along well with one of the directors. His name was Jonathan, and
mm,
people were like, "Why do you get along with him the most? Why, why do you get along with certain people more than others?" And I'd
mm.
be like, "Because patience creates understanding, which creates good relationships."
Nice, I like that.
Thank you. Without that, I if you don't have the patience to understand, you're not going to have a relationship. You're not going to
Hmm.
have the strength of that relationship. Like of like trusting them, being like when they say things are going to be fine, you'll be like, okay, you won't have to question or worry about things. You'll be like, okay, this person has me and I have them,
Hmm.
and they will help me navigate the world.
Mm.
And that's all you need.
I agree, definitely.
What what are some strategies for maintaining and nurturing relationships within a support network while managing the demands of adult ADHD?
It's essentially just being a decent friend, and what that looks like is reciprocity. Getting back what you give back. One of the things I see with ADHD, especially with learners, is a lot of them may have relationships that aren't reciprocal. So they may give a lot to the person but not get enough back. It's understanding and saying and suggesting not even suggesting your demands, telling people what that looks like for you and what it looks like to be a supportive friend to you. Because what can happen is they can be incredibly one-sided relationships. So one thing that Dr. Gabriel Mate speaks about, who I spoke about in the last podcast, in his book Scattered Minds, is that a lot of children with ADHD may be the class clown, and being the class clown is funny and it is a sort of strategy to gain attachment, essentially, to be to be seen as funny and friendly and all that sort of stuff, right? But ultimately it comes from that need, that natural, complete natural human need. But with ADHD, it's almost accentuated that need for connection and attachment. We all need attachment, but with ADHD, it can also be intersecting with things like trauma and complex PTSD, and that the need for attachment almost gets doubled, sometimes trebled. And as a result, you may enter relationships with people who get stuff from you and not get stuff and you don't get anything back, you know. So when you recognize that, it's almost evaluating your friends and asking, okay, what do I get from this person? If it's nothing, then evaluate, is that friendship worth it? Is this a one-sided friendship? Is it completely reciprocal? And if it's not, having a conversation with that person, I feel like this is happening, I feel like that is happening, you know, and understand that your reality is the reality, you know, it's real, you know, and that should definitely be taken into consideration.
And people find it hard to, you know, understand things from people's perspectives. And
Mm,
it's not really about understanding. It's like, I don't need you to understand, but I need you to listen to me.
definitely.
I need you to at least, like, if actively listen to me and get where I'm coming from, but you don't need to understand.
Hmm. Hmm.
How can individuals with ADHD, adults with ADHD, overcome feelings of isolation and develop a sense of community within their support network?
Yeah, I mean, isolation is something that people with ADHD can struggle with because sometimes we just feel like no one understands us. So there's that constant feeling from childhood for the majority of people with ADHD that you're always different. There's you know you're always a bit different. The way you think's a bit different. The way you work's a bit different, and that can be incredibly isolating. And sometimes it's about just articulating that to your support network. You know, articulating that actually, you know what, maybe this is the first time I felt like there's a group of people that actually get me for who I am. You know, and embracing that from them as well in regards to you. Maybe they say to you, "Look, I feel like you actually understand me," and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it can be sometimes, especially with things like trauma and stigmatization in the past, it can almost be quite terrifying knowing the fact that you are a good friend to someone because you may not feel like you're worthy to be a good friend to someone. You know, and that can be quite difficult. But understanding that you all have the capacity, everyone listening has the capacity to be good to someone and deserves people to be good back to them.
What are some practical tips for finding an accept, what are some practical tips for finding an access oh sorry. What are some practical tips for finding and accessing,
Mhm.
finally, resources such as educational materials and treatment options within a support network?
So obviously we're in the UK, so the NHS website's quite good when it comes to sort of treatment plans, or treatment actions when it comes to ADHD. There's quite a few links on NHS. So if you type in things like ADHD and you go down, you can look at symptoms, you can look at options. Going to your GP and speaking to a mental health nurse is always really good. So what I'd recommend is you go to your GP, you make an appointment. I think most of them are online right now, and you can speak about, okay, I think I have ADHD. They'll refer you to a mental health nurse. You have a conversation with them, and obviously going with someone that supports you within your support network could be really beneficial as well. I'm not sure. I mean, I went and I only went on my own bus because I had a lunchtime appointment during work. But you know, if you're younger, you want to go with a friend or a parent, that can be really beneficial, and helping them understand the process as well. You know, helping them sort of be there with you can really foster a really close relationship within that sort of support network and group.
You've talked about the magazine
Attitude.
Attitude.
Yeah.
Attitude. Can you discuss the potential role of online forums and
Mm.
social media groups in connecting individuals with adult ADHD to a wider support network?
Oh, they're amazing. You know, I mean these different communities. Like I said, Attitude is only one community. I'm sure there's hundreds of thousands and loads. These communities are literally ecosystems within themselves. You know, so what this is about is not about just having ADHD and living. It's about having ADHD and thriving, you know, for the most part, you know, within these communities. And they want the best for each other, everyone else and everyone in these groups. So they will naturally signpost to this, or they'll signpost to this research or this treatment technique or this diet or this bit of exercise or this bit of advice. And as a result, you're just reaching wide groups of people with ADHD and other co-occurring difficulties that could really benefit them long term.
How can individuals with ADHD navigate potential conflicts or misunderstanding within their support network?
Yeah, I mean, so it depends what kind of ADHD you have, but especially those that struggle with sort of the hyperactive or impulsive type of ADHD, you may be more conflict prone, shall we say, and within intensity, you may be more conflict averse. So those can have pros and cons within each, but if you're more of a conflict prone person, again, it's about having that patience, you know, with them, and understanding that sometimes this is just something that they've learned, where rather than something they truly believe, which is for the most part just something that they've learned. So having that patience and empathy and understanding, okay, maybe I need to explain it in a different way. If you're more conflict averse, it's about being a bit more assertive, and saying that this is my reality, this is what I'm going through, and I'm really struggling with this. If what that may look like at work, that may look like an email or a text to a manager about something that you've been through, or via your intranet, it's a conversation via internet if you're not really a face to face type of person. If you are a face-to-face type of person, it's just about taking someone to the side and be like, okay, what you said there, maybe a bit stigmatizing, and it can be seen as this way. And usually, for the most part, people have no idea realistically, and they may say, usually say, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. So, those are some strategies that can definitely help, especially in the workplace.
What are some ways to maintain a healthy balance between seeking support from others and developing a self-reliance? Let me
Mm.
rephrase, developing an over-obsessive
hmm
self-reliance in managing adult ADHD.
So, it is a very difficult balance to get right, to be honest with you. Ultimately, like I said, things don't exist in isolation. So in the ideal world, these things will be done within a community. But sometimes the way life works is that you need to be self-reliant. You need to be able to sort of do your own thing and be an individual, which is also very important as well. How you strike that balance, again, it can be very difficult. It's having an understanding of, okay, I can do this by myself, but when you really need help, it's knowing when you need help. And realistically, only you know the signs of you needing help to a high level. So it's about knowing yourself and knowing when you're struggling and figuring that out. Figuring out when you're going through a bit of burnout, figuring out when your emotions are a bit fried, or figuring out when you feel a bit sick, and having that self awareness and be like, actually, you know what, this isn't working. I need to seek help. Or, you might be getting lots of help from an external source, and that may stifle that self-reliance, and for example, if you're getting a mental health or ADHD coach, for example, and you're going through all these strategies and you're leaving the place and not using any of these strategies in your day-to-day life, that's on you. You need to sort of implement that into your life as well. So it is about having that balance, and I think those are the kind of ways you can navigate that.
Amazing. What are some effective strategies for managing ADHD symptoms in the transition to adulthood?
Yeah, I mean, so like I say, the main strategies overall are things like diet and nutrition. You need to get your diet right. You need to get your nutrition right. There's lots of different, like a lot of cheap options now when it comes to like tolerance testing as well, which is really good for managing ADHD, managing your body as a whole with ADHD. There are certain supplements you can take. I know folic acid is linked with a reduction in ADHD symptoms. Things like fish oil are linked with it as well. So diet and nutrition is really important. Exercise is vital. You know, um, Nowadays you're seeing a more of a lean to away from like things like BMI, which is pretty outdated, but things like body fat percentage is really important because muscle mass is linked to long-term health and sort of long-term brain function as well. So muscle mass and all that sort of thing is really important. Sleep as well. I say this. A good friend of mine and a quite well-renowned sports science Instagram account called JT Performance. My mate Jack Tyler, he speaks about if sleep was a drug, it'd be the most overused drug in the world, because there's nothing else that can give you 8 to 10 hours of rest and essentially reset your body whilst growing it at the same time. So sleep is vital. And getting good sleep is so important for things like brain function, executive functioning, memory, muscle growth, cell membrane regeneration, tissue growth, all these sort of things vital when it comes to those things. So I think those sort of things, if you prioritize those sort of things and you build sort of outwards outside of that, then you usually get an alleviation of symptoms and it can help you function a bit better.
Can you discuss the potential benefits and consideration of medication as a tool for managing adult ADHD symptoms?
So definitely, the thing is, regardless of all the strategies, sometimes there are some people that do need medication to manage their symptoms. And if you do. So for example, I have friends with ADHD that use medication. I don't personally, because I'm not sure I'd like the way it will make me feel. But some people, it just helps them focus. It helps them get through massive amounts of work they need to get through if their job is particularly demanding. It can help them stay centered and get through sort of things that require a fine amount of detail. It can help with sort of things like even interpersonal relationships. It can help with things like sleep as well. These are all benefits of medication as well. There are drawbacks, of course, there are side effects, but if you are one of those people that hasn't tried medication, one of the ways you can look at medication is you can think, okay, I know I'm like it without medication. What could I be like it with medication, like my life with medication, and sort of weigh the pros and cons of those sort of things. There is no one size fits all when it comes to sort of treatment plans or treatment models. So, if you're living a life with ADHD, with adult ADHD, and it's completely debilitating, then yeah, then you can definitely would consider medication. Absolutely.
How can therapy or counseling a role in supporting individuals with adult ADHD during their transition?
It's important. It's vital as well. Like I said before, with therapy and counseling, you have someone who's a third party who isn't related to you, for example, and only knows you in this particular setting, that can help you transition and understand yourself to a higher level. And as long as you engage with the therapy and counseling, because that's the other thing. There's a trained therapist or counselor, but it's you having to actually engage with it as well. I think what happens a lot of time with sort of getting sort of third party support, either therapists or counselors, is people say it doesn't work. But when you ask them, did you engage? It's like, well, I did this or I did that, and it's like, no, I'm asking you to wholly engage in this process, and truly be vulnerable, because otherwise it just won't work. I don't think every therapist is for everyone. There are some people you have better relationships with, of course, and don't get me wrong, but if you try your best to engage with someone, a trained therapist, usually it goes pretty well, in my opinion.
Mm, How can individuals manage impulsivity and impulsiveness in adult ADHD? What are some of the strategies?
Yeah, so it's about understanding what you're being impulsive for, and understanding what that impulsivity is wanting you to do in that particular situation. So sometimes, especially with adult ADHD, the impulsivity might be to be in like a meeting, for example, and just say something like completely out of turn. So it's about having that awareness of, okay, what do I need to say, or what do I want to say, and is that relevant in this particular situation, or can this wait? And having that sort of inner dialogue with yourself, having that sort of self-talk, and try not to be too critical about yourself as well, and be too critical towards yourself about wanting to say certain things, but being aware of, like, when I want to do certain things, is that using, so essentially what I advocate for is using what we call the wise mind, which is the logical part of the brain that sort of analyzes situations as they are, and sees if that is that beneficial. If I do this thing in this particular situation, will that help or hinder the situation? And for the most part, it's building that muscle, that tolerance, and that wise mind of actually going, that may help, but maybe not now, or this may help, but maybe not now, or that won't help at all. So it's about accessing that wise mind, the part of your brain that's a bit logical, and looking at situations as they are, and looking at the facts of the situation, analyzing as to whether or not it help you or won't help you.
What strategies have you found most effective in helping individuals with ADHD?
Oh my
Or
goodness.
below
So So the ones I see most effective, are things to work on self-esteem, like I said before. So things like positive you journals. So basically, essentially, figuring out the best aspects of yourself and then recognizing that every single day or in your day-to-day actions. Those work really well. Some procrastination techniques, such as like disputation questions. So figuring out things like why it is you're saying that you don't want to do certain things at a particular time. Is it because you're tired? Is it because you don't have inspiration? All those sort of things can help as well. And more long term, like I say before, I always go back to sort of diet, nutrition, exercise, sleep, all those sort of things, are incredibly beneficial long term as well. And then of course it's things like engaging with things you like to do, your hobbies, your relationships, what you find interesting, making time to play, whatever playing is for you. It could be outside, it could be video games, whatever it is, and truly sort of embracing and finding yourself. Those things, those strategies, long term are really good for people with ADHD.
What do you find is most rewarding about your role as a
Um,
mentor?
yeah, I mean, I got. I'm not gonna lie to you. I got some feedback yesterday from learners. I asked for them feedback about the provision, and I honestly almost shed a tear, because what happens is you help and you try to help so many people in so many different ways, and you spend hours looking at strategies and resources and looking at research and how to help them, and you almost get lost in the fact that you're really essentially changing people's lives. And I think the real more emotional sides of the feedback I got was one of my learners said something along the lines of, "You're the first person I've ever spoken to that truly understands me, and I actually feel like I can speak to you about anything." And I remember, myself at that sort of age when you're sort of 16, 17 years old, and what that feels like when you feel like, no one understands you. It can be very, very isolating, especially if you're going through certain things, especially, for example, in my case, losing a parent that could be incredibly debilitating. And in his case, it's like he's got a lot of stuff going on at home. So, it's that's the real rewarding side it is seeing people that you work with go on to achieve really big things as well. I mean, I'm really fortunate to have so many learners that are so intelligent and have such big dreams and want to do so many things, and some that aren't as intelligent and don't have big dreams, but for them working wherever is just as good. And I'm equally proud of all of them, definitely.
Is there anything else you'd like to add or any final thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap?
Um, Honestly, it's just, thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it. But I say the number one thing is that I wish that, like society as a whole had like more of a lean towards things like collective responsibility. We don't exist in isolation. Everything we do is connected. Every person in the world is connected in some way. So as long as we understand that, as long as we try our best to foster those connections and help heal each other and help build like a genuinely, truly kind society that actually looks at marginalized groups and helps sort of build equitable strategies to help them, then we can move forward as a race of humans. So, I hope that happens in someday. But until then, I guess we just have to keep going and fighting a good fight.
Absolutely true. How do you hope this episode will impact or resonate with our listeners?
I hope they find a sense of calming. I hope they find a sense of peace, and I hope they realize that there are people like them that not only work with ADHD, but also have ADHD themselves and are doing really well. And I hope they see themselves in me, because I definitely see myself in them. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope, if you have any questions, just drop me a line.
What's finally, last question, don't worry. What is one thing you're grateful for today?
Just in general, or
Anything.
in general, yeah. I mean, it's Saturday, so that's always nice. But I probably say the one thing that I'm grateful for, that I'm looking forward to is definitely seeing my goddaughter. I can't wait, to be honest with you. I can't wait to see her, and every time I spend time with her, I just feel better. So I'm definitely grateful for that. Absolutely.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for coming on my
That's all
Trauma's
right.
Clinic. Um, and it's actually been an absolute privilege to have you on. I we learned so much. We had an amazing conversation, not just in this like second part, but also the first part.
Mm.
And it's been absolutely amazing. Thank
No,
you so much.
it's been a pleasure being on. This is an amazing platform, and I hope it just continues to grow because it's really good.
So much.
Thank
And I
you.
hope you have a great day with your god. Oh my God, what's wrong with my your goddaughter? Yeah.
Thank you, and I hope you have a good weekend as well.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So, here are some key takeaways from our discussion on the transition of child ADHD to adult ADHD, including the importance of understanding and managing symptoms, exploring various treatment options, and developing strategies for success in personal and professional life. It's incredibly important for individuals going through this transition to reach out to professionals for guidance and support. They can provide valuable insights, help develop tailored strategies, and offer support to navigate the challenges that come with adult ADHD. For listeners feeling overwhelmed by the challenges of adult ADHD, it's important to remember you are not alone. Reach out to professionals, join support groups, and connect with others who understand your experiences. Remember that with the right strategies and support, you can overcome obstacles and lead a fulfilling life. And there are numerous success stories of individuals with adult ADHD who have found who have found fulfillment in their lives, from thriving in their careers to maintaining healthy relationships. These individuals have shown that with proper management and support, it is possible to live a fulfilling and successful life without ADHD, and so can you. Self-compassion and self-care are crucial in managing ADHD. Remember to be kind to yourself, acknowledge your strengths, and prioritize your well-being. Take care of yourself physically, emotionally, and mentally, as it can greatly contribute to managing symptoms and enhancing overall quality of life. Remember, it's it's one step at a time, even though it sounds really annoying to hear. It's one step at a time, little baby steps. Remember to stay iconic until we see you next time.